Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about a few of my own personal experiences that I've had growing up. And I want to preface this by saying that personally, had these experiences not happened to me, I would 100% be a skeptic. But I'll just go ahead and we'll get into it. So it all started back when I was 9 years old, and we moved into an apartment complex that was built, and I only know this because I've done the research at this point, it was built sometime in the 30s. And the neighborhood that I grew up in wasn't a very, it was kind of a bad area. Always kind of stayed inside. The first thing that I can remember happening, and this is actually one of my very first memories as a kid. I don't know if you all remember or if they even still make them, but they used to make these houses that were life-sized, and we had one of those. They were just kind of like a toy house. They used to sell them at Toys R Us. Of course, Toys R Us doesn't exist anymore, but we used to keep all of our toys inside of this toy house. And I have a younger sister. At the time, she was 4, and she had taken my favorite toy. And of course, being the little brat that I am, I got pissed off. Now, let me give you the layout of the apartment because it's kind of important as far as the story goes. So, the apartment was a 1-bedroom, okay? So, the bedroom was here, the living room was here, and then there's a wall outside of the bedroom, and then you can go to the dining room over here, and it goes around to the kitchen. All right? So the toy house was over here in the corner of the living room. And my sister had taken my toy, and I'm throwing this fit and just crying, bawling my eyes out because my sister took my favorite toy. My mom over it. So she goes into the bedroom and closes the door and locks it. Fair. I was being kind of a brat. So smart little me goes into that toy house. I kid you not, guys. This is one of the scariest things, and honestly, my heart is like beating a little bit faster right now talking about it with the lights off. But I go into that toy house, and my sister's favorite toy at the time was this toy hammer, and it was a yellow hammer with an orange and green tip. It was obviously a toy hammer, it's fake, but you could bang it on your hand and it would make this loud sort of squeaky noise. And I knew that she would be able to hear it if I got my hands on it. So I go into the toy house, I grab the toy hammer, and I'm sitting in the living room. I'm sitting in the living room, my mom and my sister are still in the room, door locked. And I'm just banging it as hard as I can on my hand so that my sister can hear the squeaks. I'm banging it and banging it and banging it and banging it. And from the toy house, I hear, shh. I can't even begin to explain. I instantly stopped. My heart sank to my stomach. I ran to the bedroom door, and guys, it came from my left side, exactly where the toy house was that I had just come out of. terrifying. So I'm banging on the bedroom door and I'm like, let me in, let me in. My mom still thinks that I'm just throwing this fit. And finally I'm like hyperventilating, freaking out. My mom lets me in. Still to this day, I have not told her that that's what happened. I doubt she'd even remember. But that's story number 1. That's how it all began. Pause, I need a... This is a vodka soda, and no, it's not a crack pipe. It's a reusable straw. But I made this to calm my nerves because I knew that I would freak out a little bit talking about it and bringing up those memories. Story number 2. My mom was always super paranoid, and I told you that we lived in a pretty bad area. So she had these alarm systems, but that were motion censored, okay? And so she had one at the very front door. So anytime you open the door, it'd go bling. My mom had a bunch of keys, all right? And they jingled every single time she walked into the door. And so I'd hear the billing immediately followed by this jingle. One day I'm at home alone watching TV in that bedroom. I'm watching TV and I hear billing. No jingle. So remember, I live in a bad area. My first thought is somebody broke in. I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? All that I have to protect myself in that bedroom was this really heavy flashlight. It was made out of like some type of metal, and I guess the batteries were heavy. I don't know, it must have been like maybe 10 pounds, probably like 5, honestly. I grabbed that hammer and I go out and I peek out the bedroom door. Nobody's there. I don't know why I didn't just leave, but I decide to go to the kitchen, which remember I told you is all the way around, to get a knife to defend myself. So I go to the kitchen, walk around, grab this knife, come back out, go back around. And I'm checking, I mean, it's not a big apartment. So first thing I do, check the toy house, nobody. There's nowhere else they could have hidden. I was in the bedroom, so they obviously weren't there. Only place left to check was the bathroom. Guys, that bathroom always gave me the heebie-jeebies. Like, it always freaked me out. So I go in. The curtains are closed. Guys, the strength and the courage that I had to build up to open those curtains. So I open those curtains, and I'm holding the knife like this. Open those curtains. Nobody's there. Instantly, I freak out. I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, you have to come home right now. I'm literally freaking out. Mind you, there's a bunch of background stories, like little stories, and give this a thumbs up if you want to hear the stories in between. But there are reasons why I freaked out like that. There were so many other scary things that happened within that apartment that would just make this video stupid long. So I won't even get into those. But she came home. I instantly felt better. You know, that's the one story that like I told you, had these things not happened to me, I would be a skeptic. So this is the one story that I can tell you might have a reason behind it. Maybe it was the batteries. Maybe the sensor thing was defective. Maybe it was like a malfunction, you know? So I like to tell myself that. Until this. Oh guys, this is honestly like one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me in my entire life. I told you guys my mom used to be really paranoid, and we lived in a bad area, so she always locked the windows, always locked the door, and always turned on that sensor whenever she left the house. I was at home alone this weekend because they decided to go to the beach, my mom and my sister, and I stayed back because I had to work. I'm watching TV, as I normally did, and this storm comes through, and it's this crazy heavy storm. Not uncommon for Virginia, and that's where I lived. My sister had this we had this office chair, you know, the ones with the little wheels on the bottom that like would spin, you know, you could like glide across they're kind of fun actually. You could like glide across the room if you needed to. Well, we had one of those, and my sister had been playing with it right before we left the house. Anyway, so they left. The storm happens. All of a sudden, the lights go out. Guys, this is when I was 17, right after high school. I grabbed my phone and I'm using it as a light, and the candles were in the kitchen. Remember how I told you the setup of my house? I was in the bedroom, the door was closed, and you would have to walk around to go to the kitchen. So I get out of my bedroom. I walk out, walk past the living room where that chair was, walk into the kitchen. I go in and I grab, we had this little like candlestick, so I had to grab like, these were like probably like 99-cent candles, okay? So I had to grab these candles and a plate to like melt the wax and stick them on because we didn't have candle holders. So I grab a plate and I grab like 5 candles to put them in the room and the lighter. So I have everything in my hands, my cell phone, and I'm walking out back into the living room to go back to my room. As I'm walking out, I see that chair spinning. I kid you not, this freaking chair was spinning, and so slowly too. And then it stops. And I just kind of, my mom had always told me, like, because I told you there were so many other things that happened, she would always just tell me if something happened just to ignore it and act like nothing happened. Let me tell you guys, the kitchen was over here, the front door was all the way over here, so I had to go past that chair to do anything, to leave the house, to get out of that vicinity. I had to pass that chair. So I'm grabbing this stuff and I just like walk back to my bedroom, grab my keys. I left that house so quickly. I got outside and I called my friend crying. I was like, I am not going back in that house. Remember, I told you my mom, she locks all the windows. There was no wind. There was no electricity. There was no AC. I did not bump into that chair. There's no reason that should have happened. That freaked me out. So that was the last straw for me. That was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me personally. God, my heart just sank to my stomach. I was alone. I was 17 years old. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have a car. So I left. And I'm standing in the hallway of my apartment complex. Remember, I told you it's a dangerous area. I called my friend to pick me up and I stayed at her house. Now, when my mom got back, I told her what had happened. And at this point, she was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and ask. So she asks one of the maintenance workers. She's like, there's been a lot of creepy things that have been happening, and she kind of gave him a few examples. And she goes, did somebody die? Or did something happen in that apartment? Guys, this part always gives me the chills because I finally didn't feel crazy after this. He goes, you know, right before you moved in, there was an older woman who had passed away in your apartment. All of the things that I went through in that apartment, most of the time it was by myself, and it wasn't just me. Things happened to my mom too. Things happened to my sister. I'll leave you with one last story. Now, this story isn't a big one, but it's something that did happen that I found funny. Not funny, but ironic, because my mom thought I was always making these stories up for attention. Guys, the creepiest part of that apartment was the bathroom. And I can't tell you why that bathroom freaked me out so much, but it did. So my mom was taking a shower and I'm sitting there watching TV, and she comes in the room and she goes, "Stephanie, stop," and then walks back out. And I'm like, this bitch, she's crazy. Like, okay. So I keep watching TV. She comes back in like 2 minutes later and she's like, "Stephanie, stop." And like each time she came in, she had been wrapped in her towel, okay? Like soaking wet. And I was like, "Stop what?" She's like, "I know that's you turning on the water in the bathroom." I'm like, "What water?" She's like, "The faucet." She's like, "This isn't funny, like stop." I literally hadn't done anything and my sister wasn't home. That's when my mom blamed me. So I was like, "What are you talking about?" Let me explain to you the way our faucet was set up. Our faucet was one of those old school, you have to lift it for it to turn on. It wasn't a knob, it wasn't a sensor. Literally had to lift it. I was like, "Mom, I've literally been watching TV." And when I told her that, she goes, "Seriously?" I'm like, "Yes, I was watching TV." And then she just looked at me and walked away. I think actually that's when she decided to ask the landlord. So yeah, leave a comment below. If anything has happened to you, tell me. I'm so curious. Like, ever since this has all happened to me, I have been drawn to like documentaries of like dark documentaries, like murders, ghost story. Did you hear that? It was outside, no worries. Murders, ghost stories. I've always been sort of drawn to it. So if you have anything like really creepy that's happened to you, comment below, let me know. Yeah, I actually plan on going home in a couple months. Like this video, let me know. I've thought about going back to that apartment and asking them if anything has happened there to the new tenants who live there now. Thumbs it up if you'd like to see a follow-up to this video of me going there and showing you the place if they let me, and asking them about their experiences.